name is Hui-Litwin. Today's video is on how to fill out the assets portion of the financial disclosure form. I'm so thrilled to welcome back our very special speaker, Shmuel, family lawyer and founder of Disclosure Clinic. Please note that our content is based on the law in Ontario, Canada, and that our videos only provide general information and not legal advice. Okay, so let's get going. So boy, filling out this form 13.1, we've already gone through quite a bit, right?
We really have. And just to recap, we have started with some general principles of how to organize your documents and which financial statement to use.
Yes.
And then we dealt with income. We dealt with the expenses and budget. And so now we're going to deal with the next part, or the last part, which is the property side.
That's right. So I'm looking at my form here in front of me. It's part 4, assets in and out of Ontario. So before we proceed, I just want to remind our viewers that if you haven't seen our previous videos, just click on the link here in the little I button above, and then I'll provide the links to these videos in the description box below. So don't forget to check that out. Okay, so let's go to it. So do you want to do a share screen with us?
Let's just get right into it. Okay, well, this is the form 13.1.
Yes.
And if I just scroll right to the top again, you'll see it on the corner, the top right corner of the form. And we discussed in the past when you would be using this form. So for today, we're going to be discussing part 4, the assets in and out of Ontario. And a lot of people get overwhelmed just looking at all of these columns.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so I think I'm going to take 2 minutes just to quickly explain the columns.
Great.
Okay. So really, this is a user interface question or issue. And the goal today is not to explain how the equalization calculation works, but I am just going to show you. So if you go to education and you go to posters and infographics, and then you scroll down to the apples, the bushel of apples, there is a very quick primer of what the equalization is setting out to do. And for our purposes today, I want you just to realize that there are 4 data points here. There's a data point for party 1. There's another data point for party 2. There's 2 bushels here. There's a data point for party 2.
Right.
And a second for party 2. So for the purpose of today, we are going to be looking primarily at 2 data points, your half of a story,
right,
your half of the calculation.
Right.
And so now going to the financial statement,
yep,
those 2 data points are on the first 2 columns, date of marriage and valuation date. Now I'm going to show it to you in a different way. Okay. I'm just going to show you. This is something I created for clients a number of years ago for simplicity, and I'm going to zoom out a little. Okay, this is a net worth statement, right? And now I'm going to zoom back in. And, it has a list of your property, your vehicles, household items, bank accounts. It's just a net worth statement. Okay, nothing you haven't seen. I don't know, taking out a mortgage, for example. But this is the net worth statement as of the date you got married. And then on page 2, zooming out again, is the exact same thing, but for, valuation date. Okay, we'll talk about what that means in a second.
Okay.
And then you can have one more sheet of paper with a net worth statement for today's date.
Okay.
3 net worth statements, and there might be some duplication because, right, you might have the same property for 2 of those dates. Let's say date of separation and today's date.
Right.
And going back to the financial statement, all they did is put it down so that it's on one page.
Right. Okay.
right?
Okay.
And you might say, oh, that kind of makes sense now, like it avoids some element of duplication. But if you don't get that right away, it looks very confusing. Okay, so basically you're filling out 3 net worth statements using one form.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, some would say that this is a very good use of paper back when paper mattered, right?
Okay, right.
Okay.
Yes.
So very quickly, again, I'm not talking so much about the law today as much as just how to fill this form out correctly. The date of marriage is the date you civilly got married.
Right.
In civil law. So you would have a marriage certificate,
right.
Not the marriage license, the marriage certificate, and it would have a date on it as to the date that you got married. Okay, not even the date when it's registered, it's the date you were married. Valuation date is the date you, it's actually a list of possible dates. Okay. The most, and there's legal definitions, and yes, people do have disputes over this because there's no legal separation. There's no document that says you're separated.
Right. Right.
It's a question of fact. Okay, and the fact is the day, for most people, the day that the relationship broke down with no possibility of reconciliation. Okay, there's so much to say under that little sentence. That's for most people who separate and are going through a divorce. If you're going, if your spouse dies, then the valuation date is actually the day before the date of death. Many people wonder, okay, so what's so special about these dates? And the answer is there's nothing special other than it's in the legislation. And this is a made-up calculation, the whole equalization calculation. And it represents the sharing of growth. So, if you're worth $10 on valuation date and you were worth, let's say $3 when you got married, on the date you got married, then notionally you grew by 7. And that number 7 is is what we call net family property. That's the legal term called net family property. Now, this same calculation has a number of quirks. There are 3 quirks to it, and we'll get to them in context. Okay? Confusingly, the date of commencement of cohabitation has nothing to do with this calculation. Okay, so this line item underneath valuation date that says the date of commencement of cohabitation, if you're married, it really has no bearing on the property calculation. Okay. Now that I say no bearing, I have to now say it has little bearing, because there is the ability to bring up pre-marriage cohabitation in a very discrete argument that we're not discussing today. The other confusing thing about the form is that if you are not married, and you are making a property claim, as the law stands as of the date of this video, then there's some expectation that you're going to use the date of cohabitation as the date of marriage, but it doesn't do the same math, and it's extremely confusing. And even as I talk about it, I don't want to talk about it. So if you are watching this and you're not married, you only use this form if there is a property claim that is based on what we call resulting trust or constructive trust, or unjust enrichment generally. Those 3 big words. And you're supposed to modify the form to fit the date of marriage being the date of cohabitation, and it's confusing. So let's just leave it at that. So let's now discuss, and please stop me with questions.
Actually, yes, it's good that you said that, because I have one quick question. Are you allowed not to fill things out in this form?
Yes and no.
Oh no. I don't know. I should have asked.
Well, you should be giving as much information as possible. If there is information that should be filled in and is not, and the other side looks at your form and says, hey, you're missing some information that should be here, it's going to affect the credibility of your information that is there.
Okay, so I should probably fill this out and then have a lawyer sort of like check to give me some advice as to, because
well,
like,
at the risk of sounding self-serving, yes.
Yeah, I know, but
you
sometimes
should definitely
have to. Yeah, because it can impact the sort of the legal outcome, so to speak, if you are actually going to take this case to court. But the only reason why I'm asking is like, if my interpretation of cohabitation is different from my husband, right? Okay, like if my interpretation of cohabitation is the same as my husband, then everyone's happy, right? No one's going to argue about it. But a lot of times these things like, because I'm going, oh, well, you know what, you were over at my apartment for like 3 of the 7 nights a week. Is that cohabitation? Like things like that. I mean, I don't know how to answer truthfully.
Right. So the short answer is, that is a legal question.
It is a legal
and people do fight over this because
goodness.
it could impact, again, on spousal support and also on a discrete issue with regards to the property calculation.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So you might want to just run that by a lawyer.
Okay. Okay.
Got it. The other short answer is that provide some answer. And even if it's not a full date, you can say we started to live together for real at least from 1989, but we were dating from 1987.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, you're trying to disclose as much as possible.
And look, see, it doesn't limit it to 4 digits.
Right. Okay, got it. All right, move on.
Okay.
That's it.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm a big believer. You want to be truthful and accurate and on the one hand, and you want to be succinct on the other hand. And there is some middle there where you can say, well, this is what I think.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Gotcha. Okay. Sounds good.
All right. So, just scrolling through all of these items, you can see generally that there are, I don't want to say 5 or 6, but let's call it 5 or 6 columns for each.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
And the question is, how do you approach this document and do it once and do it right?
Yeah.
As best as you can. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to go through it. Okay. Yeah. And realize that this is information. Okay. Okay. You are writing information. Whether the information is true or accurate is a separate real question for me. And so what I want from a client, and what I think a person just filling it out, wants to do is to fill out the information as best as they can so that they then can collect some documentation. And it's going to really be a 3-part procedure. You're going to be listing the information. Right. You're then going to be collecting the documentation, and then you're going to be inserting the values.
Oh, right. Sounds good.
On the 3 dates, to the extent that they exist on any of those dates.
Right.
Okay, so you get that. It's a 3-part flow. Mm-hmm. It's not so straightforward. First, you got to make the list because it's very particular to yourself. Right. Then you collect the documentation, and then you look at the documentation and fill in the values. Right. Okay. Got it. So, and then the last thing that is very important before you approach this document is to recognize that there are really 2 big components of information that each line item provides. One is ownership, and one is value. Right. And those are 2 distinct issues: ownership and value. Okay. Because you're going to have to prove both. And sometimes there's going to be an argument over one, but not the other. Yeah. Or there might be an argument over one that might affect the value. So we can get right into that. So I'm just going to fill this out. We're going to make believe. So the date of marriage is January 1, 2000. The valuation date is July 31, 2022. Just to date the document. And, you know, sometimes summer 1998.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Right? I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
That works.
All right.